Alright, so you've already kind of learned about high and low graphic content or high and low graphic imagery, and now we're going to kind of integrate that with the bigger, broader concept of graphic order. Graphic order has to do with graphic content, high or low graphic, and it has to do with order or organization, high or low order. And visual hierarchies are kind of a part of it, but I'm not going to require you to use content for this. So you're not going to have to find like actual text. You'll kind of have the choice as to whether or not you want to do that for certain parts. Essentially what you're going to do is you're going to make a 3x3 grid of 9 different spreads. You're going to use all the tools you've learned up until this point, type tools, drawing tools, Photoshop. The way you organize the 9x9 grid of spreads is pretty simple. The columns will go from high to low order, and the rows will go low to high graphic. And I'll kind of go over that in the following slides here. Each spread needs to at least be an 8.5 by 11 letter size sheet of paper. You can rotate that landscape style and then just do half and half for a spread, or you can actually make it to scale and do two 8.5 by 11 sheets per spread. A spread just means if you open up like a magazine, the left hand page and the right hand page, that is a spread of 2 pages. So you'll be designing that 9 different times, and for each column you'll have a different subject. So you only have to find 3 subjects, and you'll kind of organize your folder so that you have enough pictures of each subject, and your subject should match your order or your organization method for each column. So low order, you probably want to pick a subject that's kind of on the fringes, and then high order you're probably going to pick somebody who's a little bit more traditional. This is a big project, so kind of think in terms of like what it would mean to design a magazine, or what it would mean to design a book or a textbook or something with a lot of content, a lot of pictures and text. This isn't as ambitious as that. You're only really designing 9 spreads, which would amount to 18 pages, when in fact most magazines are at least 40 plus pages, and most books or other print content are way beyond that. So even though it may seem like a lot, this has some real world applications, and this is kind of the level of frustration and organization that you need to have to complete these big projects. Alright, so what is graphic order? This is right here, graphic order, and this is how I expect you to lay out your spreads for your project. The top row here is low graphic. So low graphic, again, if you remember the previous project, refers to any imageries that is low in detail. It doesn't have a lot of detail. It doesn't have a lot of color. It doesn't have a lot of stuff going on in it. It's small. The orange here stands for a picture, and the pictures are very small. They're very low in the organization here. So they're not nearly as important as they would be in a medium graphic spread, where the pictures are a little bit bigger. The balance between text and picture or graphic content in these spreads is about 50-50 in a medium graphic spread. High graphic obviously is the opposite of that. High graphic means it would be, the picture would be the most important, and it would have lots of detail, lots of color, lots of stuff going on, or the maximum amount of stuff going on in it that it could allow. So that's the last row. The columns are organized by order. So high order means, very, very tight organization. You can see in that column that all of the text and the photos are rectangular. They're very, very well organized, very, very tight and structured. So the subject that you pick for that first column should be a pretty conservative or traditional subject. I would keep it to something that everybody kind of knows and understands. as being traditional, so something like an orchestra. And I only pick music as an example because it's an easy thing to think about for these spreads. The medium order column obviously would be something that's mainstream or common or everyday, something you see all over the place, but can have a little bit of pizzazz or spice to it if you want it to. And you'll notice in the medium order spreads that occasionally there's diagonal text, or there's like a curve or some kind of unconventional way the text is formatted. That's fine, but for the most part it's pretty controlled, it's pretty organized. The low order column obviously is the most disorganized. You're going to want to pick a subject for that that's on the fringe, something extreme that deserves that kind of like disorganized look. So, you know, pick maybe your favorite underground artist for that column. When you're setting text for these spreads, again, you don't have to use actual text. You can use what's called Lorem Ipsum. Lorem Ipsum is Latin for something, I can't remember, but it's a phrase from a passage by Cicero, and it's used when creating spreads of text so that you don't read the text. When designers are designing, they don't want to be distracted by the content, so they use Lorem Ipsum to kind of fill the space, and they apply the font or the spacing to it to just see how it looks as a designer. This is highly advantageous to you. It means you don't have to find content for whoever you're making these spreads about, and it also means that you don't have to really get distracted by that if you use Lorem Ipsum. If you just type in or Google Lorem Ipsum, you'll be brought to a website, a Lorem Ipsum website that generates Lorem Ipsum for you automatically. Alright, so here's an example. This is probably, I would say, medium graphic and medium order, I would guess. So kind of dead center of your spreads here. It's a 50-50 balance between text and pictures, and the pictures have a normal amount of contrast and color and detail in them. Here we have probably a high graphic medium order example, and the rest of this PowerPoint here, this lecture, is just going to be examples of magazine spreads. Kind of look through them and just sort of think in your head, which graphic order is this? Is this high order or low order? And then sort of start to plan out who you want for each section. Refer to the second slide if you're not sure how to organize your 9 spreads. And then I believe that JPEG of graphic order is in the project folder as well as the presentation, so look to that if you get stuck. I am going to end this video with the demonstration video, and there is also a tutorial as to how to make your graphic order spreads as well. Alright, I'm going to walk you through kind of how to do your graphic order project. This is a very ambitious project. It's got a lot of components. First things first, you can always refer to the graphic order tutorial in the project folder if none of this makes sense or you can't follow it. It'll walk you through pretty much the exact same things I'm going to show you right now in this video. First things first, before you start making any files, please organize your content. So I've made a folder here, and I've made 3 separate folders to organize my high order, low order, and medium order column pictures. So high order, I'm going to do classical music, so I just got a picture of some classical notes there. Obviously you'll want to find more photos to represent each artist or whatever it is you're doing for each column of spreads. You don't remember how it's organized, just go back to the PowerPoint. PowerPoint will have on the second slide here how you should organize your spreads. And right now I'm going to show you how to set these spreads up in Illustrator. So Okay, so first things first, we're going to set up a file in Illustrator. And you can do this first if you want, or you can start editing your photos in Photoshop if you want, but I'm just going to work in Illustrator and set up my file first. To do that, go File, New. And before you click OK, let's make Illustrator work for you. You got to do for this project 9 spreads. And I recommend you organize them how they're organized here in the PowerPoint. This is slide 2 of the PowerPoint. Because you have to organize them by order and graphic content, this is how you should probably make your artboards. So to do that, first name your file, put your name on there, and then put graphic order somewhere in the title, hopefully. And then make sure your document size is set to letter size. Letter is 8.5 by 11. You can actually do any size you want, really. I don't mind. And then I'm going to set my units to inches, and I'm going to make 9 artboards. Okay, and the reason for that is pretty straightforward, simple. In our graphic order thing, there's 9 spreads that you have to design, and then I'm going to set it up so that there's 3 columns, kind of like the PowerPoint. And then I'm going to increase the space between each one to about 1 inch. Okay, so there'll be 1 inch between each spread. The last thing you're probably going to want to remember to do is set your orientation to landscape. The technical term spread means it's kind of like an open magazine. So imagine you open up a magazine, you see 2 sides of a page. That is a spread. So if we zoom in on this first spread here, which is what we're going to work on first, this would be high order and then low graphic. Okay, the first row again is low graphic, medium graphic, high graphic, and then high order, medium order, low order. Okay, and always remember, you can, if you forget any of that, just go back to the PowerPoint. It's slide 2 of the PowerPoint, and you can just refer to this if you get stuck. But we're going to work on this first spread here, and I'm going to kind of recommend that you use grids and guides to kind of set up your spreads. Okay, so we're on the low graphic, high order spread. And I'm going to kind of show you how to use grids and guides to set up your spread here. To turn on grids, again, that's Control apostrophe. And then to turn on your ruler, that's Control R. And then we're going to click and drag some guides out here to kind of organize our spread. So I'm going to turn on Snap to Grid, which is Shift Control apostrophe. All right. So I'm going to give myself some generous margins here. So I'm going to give myself a 1 inch margin on this side, 1 inch margin on that side. And then the middle of the spread would be about here. Since this is 11 inches wide, 5.5 is dead center. So we can put a line down dead center for where the fold would be in the spread. And I can go out from there 1 inch if I want to, which leaves us with an extremely large gutter. Now, if that's the design you want to make, that's fine. But let's make the top and bottom margins a little less extreme. I'm only going to make it a 1/2 inch here. Okay, and so now we have this gutter space, which is where the fold would be when you open up your magazine. And you've got these ample margins on either side. And we've got it pretty well organized now. We can even organize it more if we want. Like we could split this in half here and give ourselves a little bit of kind of a more structure to the grid. So like if you had a picture in this section and then text here and it flowed over here, then you could really keep that organized, and then between each page in the magazine you would keep it on this kind of grid format so that it looked consistent and read well. Okay, so now we can add some text to our spread here. And what I'm going to highly recommend you do is not type your own words. Just use Lorem Ipsum. Lorem Ipsum is a Latin phrase. I don't actually know what it means in Latin, but if you type in Lorem Ipsum, Lorem Ipsum, again, is just gibberish Latin, and it's a placeholder for real text. So when you're designing something so that you have text there so you can see what it looks like and see what font looks like, but you won't read it. You won't stop and be distracted by what it says. It's just there as a placeholder. So if you type in Lorem Ipsum, the first website hit here, Lorem Ipsum, all the facts, blah, has a Lipsum generator. Okay, so you can generate Lorem Ipsum. And you can create as many paragraphs as you want, or you can specify it by words or bytes or whatever. So I'm going to make myself 9 paragraphs here, and then I'm going to click the generate Lorem Ipsum, and it'll give me 9 paragraphs of gibberish. And this is just absolutely great for placeholder text. So highlight all the text, Control C to copy it, and then in my document here, I'm not going to quite set it just yet. I'm going to put it over to the side, and we'll copy it into a text box. So go to your type tool, click and drag, and then obviously Control V to paste it. Okay, so we have some Lorem Ipsum in here, and it's type that's overset actually. You can see the little overset symbol down here. It's this little red thing, and I'm going to switch to my regular selection tool so I can kind of move this around if I want. And this text here, we can actually start to set this text if we want it. So to do that, the easiest way to set all the text in the paragraph here is to put your cursor active inside the text and then hit Control A to select all of it. And then you can go to the character panel or the paragraph panel to set the paragraph or character and just sort of manipulate that. So first things first, I could set things like the leading, which is the space between lines. I can decrease that, and then I can increase things like tracking, which is the space between letters. If I want, I can change the point size to a smaller point size if I want. I'm just going to keep it at 12. I can change the font. I'm not going to change the font for this right now. And basically just play around with how the text looks, how it feels. You can sort of think in terms of like a professional magazine here. Like what looks best, what reads best. Take a look at some of the examples in the PowerPoint, or go make some Google searches and just check out what most magazines look like to see how you should be setting your type. Once you've got it set, you can start to put it in your spread here, and I will show you how to do that, and I will show you how to thread text. Okay, so now we're going to put our text inside of our spread here, and I'm going to show you how to thread text. To thread text, it's real simple. I'm going to take this text box. I could copy and paste it into here. I'm going to take this text box and I'm going to kind of squeeze it to fit inside of my guides here. Okay, because remember, these guides are supposed to guide where the margins are for our document here, our magazine spread. And then you'll notice the text is overset. So to thread text to another text box, that will continue this thread of text to another text box. So we're just going to click on that overset button. Okay. And what that'll do is that'll change our cursor. You'll notice it looks like a little bit like a paragraph of text with an arrow on it. And that'll allow us to make another text box by clicking and dragging. And this text will be threaded to that text. You'll notice there's a big blue thread connector line. And that's just indicating that this text starts over here and then threads to the top of this paragraph here. And then it's dynamic. So if I shrink the size of this, that text will flow into this other text box. Okay. This is great for when you have actual content. Right now this is just an example, so you don't really need to worry about it too much. And you've got kind of a well-designed high order layout here. This is single column. It's centered. Lots of white space, nice and conservative. Text is oriented the right way, so there's not much else to do aside from adding a picture. So if I want to add a picture, think in terms of high and low graphic here. Low graphic is this first row. The one we're working on right now is a low graphic spread, right? So we're gonna want to use a small picture, and it can't be eye-catching. It can't have high contrast. It can't dominate the composition. So, to help that picture along, I'll probably bring it into Photoshop here, and I'll probably kind of edit it a little bit. So let's do that. File, open, and then go to your project folder and go to your high order pictures. I just have one picture here that for the one spread I'm demonstrating. You'll obviously have more, and you can work on all of these if you know which picture is going to go to which spread, or you can work on them as you make your spread. So this graphic is pretty harmless. I probably wouldn't need to edit it if I didn't want to, but let's say I do. One of the things I showed you in the previous project was using transparent paint, or just painting or putting a solid fill layer that was transparent on top of this layer to kind of knock it back. You can do that if you want. I'm actually going to use my brush here to do the same thing. So if I paint with white and I turn down my opacity, that'll kind of knock back that black and sort of wash this out. I can do that to kind of just sort of slowly fade this in at the back here so that it's a little less, high contrast, a little less eye-catching. And then when I'm done with that, just File, Save As, and then save it as a different version than your original file so that you can come back to it. You can save it as a Photoshop file if you want, but I'm just going to save mine as a JPEG because that's all I need it to do. And I'm not going to go back to this file and edit it or do anything special with it. So it's okay that I don't save it as a Photoshop file. Okay, so I don't need to save that Photoshop file. Let's go back to Illustrator. Okay, so I'm back in Illustrator and I'm going to place my image into my spread here. I'm going to add a title. So to place an image, go File, Place. Find your image file. Again, it'll be in the high order pick one, and we've got our alternatively edited photo in here. So when I place it, I can resize it. Remember to hold down Shift to constrain your document, and it kind of fades out at the margins right there, so I'm just going to leave it like that. Alright, and we'll put some text on there to do a title. Now, because this is high order, I probably wouldn't do something fancy like text on a path, but it's up to you. It's your spread. You can do what you want. Let's just make some simple type on a point here. I'm just going to click once and then type some phony title. A night at the symphony. Alright. And then I can highlight this text. I can center it. We can make it a bit larger since it is in fact the title. We can change the font it's in just to kind of set it apart and create sort of a hierarchy here. And then there's a bunch of other stuff I could add. I could add the author. I could add a caption or credits, anything else to sort of enhance this spread. Doesn't really matter though how you kind of design it, so long as you keep it within the confines of what this spread is supposed to be. And remember, this spread is supposed to be in the high order column. So this is a highly organized spread. There's not a lot of like chaos or fancy stuff going on. It's just sort of simple and straightforward and easy to read. Some clients that you will work for require highly organized, very conservative looking documents, and so you need to keep in mind that this is high order. This client wants a high order spread or a high order organization to their materials. I'm going to give that to them. I know what that means. I know what that looks like. I've worked with that before. And then, depending on the document or whatever it is, they may need, again, low graphic or high graphic. This is a low graphic. So let's move on and move on to medium order, medium graphic. Okay, so now we're on medium order and medium graphic. So medium graphic just sort of means it's about a 50-50 balance between picture and text. So we're actually going to do something special with the picture this time, and I'm not going to set the text quite yet. You kind of know how to set text, and for medium order you don't really get too much more fancy with the text setting. You just sort of kind of play around with it maybe a little bit more, use an unusual shape for it maybe once. When you get to low order, you can go absolutely bonkers with text and how it's set. And I'll show you some new techniques in low order for how to set text. But for now, I'm just going to show you some special things you can do with pictures. So let's go to Photoshop. Okay, so in Photoshop, I'm going to show you how to do some things that you can use for any of your spreads, but I'm going to use this for my medium order spread. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine two images using a selection. which is kind of like Photoshop 101 here. So File, Open. We're going to go to my medium order picks here, and I just picked 2 chains, map. All right, I got this image here, and I'm going to combine a logo with this image, and I'll show you some things about how to do that. So I'm going to open another image, File, Open. Okay, I'm going to open this. I'm going to place this into this image. So to do that, I got to make a selection. And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the actual emblem here and get rid of the white. One way to do that is to use the selection tools. Okay, so one tool I could try is the lasso tools here. The regular lasso tool allows you to just sort of draw with your mouse a selection around your object, and unless you're really, really good with the mouse, it's going to be hard to make a good selection. So I highly recommend you don't use the lasso tool for precise selections. If you make a selection and you kind of screw up, the hotkey to undo a selection is Control-D to deselect. That's also in the Select menu. Under Select, Deselect is the second option. You can try to use, if you want, the magnetic lasso tool. And what the magnetic lasso tool does is it senses where there's a difference in color. And so it will run along the edge of contrast between two colors. And mine's kind of working, but because it's kind of gray with a white background, it's not quite noticing the difference between the outer edge of the emblem and the white background, because they're just too similar in value. Now I can, if I want, when I'm drawing, change the contrast or the width of that tool and see if I can change the settings to make it work, but it's, yeah, probably not the best tool for the job. So Control-D to deselect that. Another tool you can use for selections or try to use is the wand tool. The wand tool has a bunch of settings. I'm going to set the tolerance pretty low here, and then I'm going to uncheck the contiguous box. That just means it's going to select whatever color pixel is similar to the first click that I make here. So if I click on the white, it selects all of the white in this picture. And obviously there's a lot of white in the object, so this probably isn't the best tool to use. Now if this emblem was a different color than white, this tool would work great. It would pick all the white out, and we could, again, make our selection based off of that. So let's just Control-D. Things you can try to adjust with the wand tool is tolerance. So if I turn that down, that'll kind of help make less of a selection, which it's not. And I can check the contiguous box if I want to. Contiguous just means it will only select pixels next to the pixels I click on. So if I click on the white, it's only going to pick the white that's outside of the white I clicked, or next to this white that I clicked. And none of these holes in the middle will get selected. Now I can add to that selection if I want to. If you change the selection mode to add selection and then click in these new parts, it will add to the selection. Okay? And you'll notice your wand tool will change to a little plus sign by it. Now I'm doing pretty okay here. I'm adding most of this, but I can't quite seem to get all of it just perfect. So to clean up our selection, I'm going to recommend you use Quick Mask. Okay, so Quick Mask is by far the best way to make selections, and I'm going to use a Quick Mask here to kind of clean this selection up. You'll notice I've got most of what I needed selected, the white here, and I'm going to kind of clean up little sections here and there using Quick Mask. So to use Quick Mask mode, go to the bottom of your toolbox. There'll be a little button that prompts you to edit in Quick Mask mode. The hotkey for Quick Mask mode is the Q button as well. And you want to get used to using Quick Mask for making selections, so remember that hotkey. Click that button, and when you're in Quick Mask mode, you'll notice the things that aren't selected are highlighted in red. This is a callback to an era in photography when actual masks were light red transparencies. I'm not going to get into the history of that because I can't quite remember it all. But to edit a Quick Mask, use the brush tool. It's really simple. Think of it like a layer mask. So I'm going to switch to my brush tool here, and I'm going to paint in only black and white. So I've got black here, and that'll mean I will paint kind of red to get rid of this part of my selection here. So if you remember how to use the brush, the bracket keys make the brush larger or smaller, and the shift bracket keys will make it harder or softer. So I'm going to make my brush a little bit harder, a little bit smaller. And if I hit Q, again, our selection is cutting into part of the Z here. That's part of the emblem, so we want to keep that. So if I hit Q again to go back to quick mask mode, and I paint with black, I can paint that away and into my selection there. Make sure your opacity is set at 100%, otherwise you won't add that whole part to your selection. You'll only add transparent pixels to it. And I can continue to clean up my emblem here. Notice it's got these funky little areas here. I could clean those up if I wanted to. Any corners, I don't like how those look. I can clean those up. If there's any part of this that you need to clean up, you can clean it up with your kind of paintbrush tool. Okay, there's not much to clean up here, so I'm probably done, and I can hit Q to go back to my selection. So right now we've got the background selected. We need to select the emblem. There needs to be just marching ants, which is what the selection field is called, around our emblem. So what I'm going to show you how to do now is invert your selection. This is really handy. If you want to select the subject, you need to have marching ants around your subject that you're selecting. If you want to select the background, the marching ants should be around your background. Right now they're surrounding our background. You can tell because there's marching ants around the border of our image here. So let's invert that. So go to select and then inverse. Okay, now our emblem is the only thing that's selected. And what we can do now is we can copy this to our other image. To copy an image that we've made a selection of, or a part of an image that we've made a selection of, is simple. You just hit Control-C on your keyboard, and that should copy the image to your clipboard. Once you go into the other image, just hit Control-V, and you'll paste that image into that document. And then you can switch to your move tool and you can move it around like it's an independent object. Ours is pasted into a new layer. So we've got it right where we want it. I can put this wherever I want. I can put it at the bottom here by his chest, on his patch here. It doesn't really matter. This is just an option that's available to you. I'm going to use it as the title of my article, so I'm just going to put it over here. And then I'm actually going to use my paintbrush. Okay, apply. And I'm going to use my paintbrush to paint out his other hand. So I'm going to go to his layer, double click on it to make it a layer, sample black, and then just paint this side out. All right. When we put it in the document, I'm actually going to crop it with a clipping mask so that it's right here. But for the most part, I'm happy with what I've got. And I can save this, if I want, as a Photoshop file and go back to Illustrator. Okay, so now we're back in Illustrator, and I'm going to place my image onto my medium graphic, medium order spread, and then I'm going to show you how to use a clipping mask again. So to place images in your Illustrator file, again, File, Place, and then we'll go to our medium order pics. And because I didn't save it as a JPEG, I can actually place the Photoshop file in there. So if I select the Photoshop file and click Place, it should place. Okay, so my image is placed in my file now. I can make it a little bit smaller. Make sure when you constrain or shrink your images, you hold down the Shift key. Okay, and right now I've got it about the size of my spread. I'm actually going to use a clipping mask to make this a little bit smaller. So to make a clipping mask, you can use any kind of shape. I'm actually going to draw my shape. So I'm going to go to my pen tool, and I'm going to make a basic square shape here. Okay, and when I get to the bottom, I'm going to option click out some handles and make kind of a curvy, sort of wavy bottom here. And then complete my shape. Okay, so here's my clipping mask shape, and then here's the subject I want to clip that's underneath it. Remember, for a clipping mask to work, your clipped path here needs to be on top of the picture or whatever you're going to mask. Okay, select both objects and then right click on them and make clipping mask should be one of your options. Okay, so now I got this kind of cool looking photo here with you know, kind of this wavy sort of clipping mask, and that kind of makes it a little bit medium order. Again, we don't have to be as tight and controlled and as conservative as we would be with the high order column. So we can actually play around with this kind of stuff. Now I'm just going to take these text columns here and copy these over to here. Okay, and then you can kind of play around with how the text is set and maybe do, you know, different kind of column setup. Okay, but try to keep it kind of conservative-ish. Medium order does not get nearly as chaotic as low order does, so keep some organization to it. Let's thread this over here. Okay, gonna play around with that. Maybe we change our column width every time and our column height a couple of times here. So if I want to, I can make this real tall, kind of like I would here. Okay, so that's a little medium order. Normally in a high order you would keep all of these the same height, but since we have this curve here, we can kind of play with the height. And I've played with the gutter space here. These columns are not the same width, which makes for a little bit harder reading time, but kind of makes it look a bit more medium order, a bit looser in terms of its organization. So let's move to low order. Okay, for low order, we want to get kind of chaotic. Low order means little to no organization, so you can really break all the rules. Let's start with our low order photo. So I'm going to open my low order photo. Okay, so metal band. All right, so we've got a subject that kind of is sort of angry and raw, so we can make it look kind of violent or excessive in ways. I'm just going to play around with some brushes here. I've got some fancy brushes in my brush palette that I can use. If you want to use some of the other brushes in your brush palette, feel free to experiment with those and play around with them. Let's do this, and we'll go to red, and we'll just kind of like make some, whoa, too dark. Some red hazy clouds here, it doesn't really matter. We can change the brush settings if you want. The brush setting panel is right here. If you don't see it, go to Window, Brush. Okay, and you can actually make your brush do some really cool things here. You can make it scatter. Scattering is kind of a random effect depending on how you turn up the jitter controls, and you can change the spacing. Okay, you can go to Shape Dynamics and make the angle rotate randomly, so that when you paint with it, it'll do all sorts of weird things. So now it's kind of textured and it looks kind of random and weird. Okay, now obviously I'm just kind of playing around here being random. You don't have to be so random if you don't want to. In fact, it would be totally up to you how you make your images look low order. There's a bunch of different things you could try. Play around with them. Play around with your brushes. Play around with the methods you've used in previous projects. Let's say I'm happy with this. I'm going to save it, and we're going to go back to Illustrator here. Essentially what I'm going to do now is show you how to make some more advanced clipping paths again using Pathfinder. So you're going to want to play around with how you present images in low order. I highly recommend you do not present them in rectangles. Again, do not present them as rectangles or squares. Low order means low organization. A rectangle or a square is like the highest form of organization. You look at these high order spreads here, these are all rectangular layouts. When you get to low order, you can start to use things like circles. You can use just random shapes. You can get crazy with it. Don't feel the need to be so conservative and tight and controlled with how you do your layouts. And because this is high graphic, I can actually make my graphics really, really large here. So I'm going to make these super large. Okay, so this will be my clipping mask here. And then I can actually use some other creative tools as well. So first things first, Pathfinder. Select all your objects, go to Pathfinder, and I'm going to use Unite. That'll make all of these one shape for our clipping mask. Another crazy tool I could use is called the blob brush tool. The blob brush tool is down in the lower left-hand section of your drawing tools in your toolbox. Again, use the bracket keys to make the brush larger or smaller. And I'm just going to make some paint drips for this shape. So that I paint on the shape, I'll select it, and then I'll just paint down and make some paint drips. Okay. Make it a little smaller. Paint down, paint drip. Smaller still. Okay. Doesn't look too good. And again, I'm just playing around here. Make some more paint drips. Okay, not the best. Still kind of a fun random tool. Alright, that's something you can try. If you want your picture to appear in shapes that are apart from it, you can't group them. You have to make a compound shape. Okay, so to make your photograph appear in objects that are not a part of the shape, you have to make your shape a compound shape. So let's say I want my photograph to appear in these little drips here. I have to select all of these objects and then go Object, Path, Object, Compound Path, Make. Okay, and in my Layers palette, it'll show up as a compound path. This will allow me to make a very complex looking clipping mask where my picture appears in more than one shape at a time. So let's place our image and put our make it a clip path. Okay, to place an image and create a clip path, I'll kind of quickly walk through that while I talk about some other stuff. This is your low order spread, high graphic though. So that just sort of means that you can be extremely, you can let the picture just sort of dominate the composition here. All right. To make a clip path again, make sure your object's on top of your subject. Highlight both, right click, and then make clipping mask. And that actually works pretty good. We got selection of the singer here, and then all these kind of random cloudy circle shapes. And obviously, because this is compound path, these shapes down here show parts of the picture as well. To edit your compound path, just double click on it, and then you can move your picture around if it's not quite where you need it. Okay, I'm just going to move this kind of up. All right, and then we can add our text in there, and I'm going to show you some advanced text setting options. Okay, so because this is low order, we can get kind of crazy with our text here. I'm going to set the text inside of a circle. So I'm going to make kind of a big oval shape here. All right, give it a black fill so we can see it for now. And then, of course, to make this a text area type box here, we go to our type tool and then wait until the box changes to a circle here. And that'll be the prompt we need to create area type inside of here. And I'm actually just going to copy and paste all of the text from here. So copy, go to this, put my cursor active in there, and then paste. Okay. So now I've got my text inside here. Doesn't really matter if it's overset. And then I can kind of thread it to other parts of my document if I want. So let's make another circle. Okay. We can make this kind of big here. And then create text box. All right. And then we'll just thread this to that. Now to do that, you got to find it first. And you can thread text to other text box with this little button up here. Notice that white square? That white square has when you hover your cursor over it with threaded text, it will show a little chain link icon, and that's it prompting you to connect those with the text thread. So if I click there, that'll thread it to this brand new text box. Okay. Now in this text here, I'll probably want to change that instead of black to a white fill. Okay, so that you can see it. All right. And then I can do some other stuff to this too if I want. If I want to rotate it, that won't affect the orientation of the text, right? It'll just say straight up. So what you need to do to rotate actual text inside an area type is you need to use the free transform tool. So to rotate text inside of a text box, you need to use the free transform tool. The E key is the hotkey for that. I never use that hotkey, but just in case. And then you can just sort of rotate the text there. And I recommend you do this for low order because it's low order. You want to be chaotic and sort of have fun with it. And then when you do your title, obviously do your title really, really, really large. And you can do stuff like type on a path or go real crazy and edit your type a lot. I'm not going to show you anything more right now. Go back to your tutorial here, and there are just absolutely tons of things you can do. This tutorial is really long. It shows you a bunch of different crazy things you can try. It walks you through kind of the exact same things I just showed you and more. So yeah, this is your low order high graphic spread. So I have a huge amount of pictures here and then not too much text, but when I do my pictures and my text in here, it's extremely chaotic and unorganized. There's no rectangles, there's no organization. It's just sort of random and playful. Okay? Have fun kind of making your spreads, and then make sure you ask me for help if you're having trouble setting up your documents or doing any of these techniques.